do you ever get sick of just keep on repeating the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again till you just throw your hands, you just throw your hands up in the air and you say, I give up. Do you ever feel that way? Because I feel like that all the time because these already decades old refuted arguments against Islam and the Prophet Muhammad just keep coming up over and over and over again. People go on my channel and they keep, or Christians keep going on my channel and they keep citing over and over the Prophet Muhammad's marriage with Aisha, old pedophile argument. Islam allows child marriages, etc., etc. Even though it's already been refuted like thousands of times before, they just keep repeating the same old, for lack of a better term, retarded argument. But anyways, somebody's been coming on my channel saying this whole thing, about, Prophet Muhammad being a pedophile, and stupid, this whole stupid accusation, this already refuted accusation. So again, this is like this is inconsistent from coming from Christians. And I'll get into that in a little bit. As for the issue of Aisha, again, this is a very simple. Well, let me just address the whole pedophile thing. A pedophile is someone who has sexual intercourse with children, plural children, right? This is a completely different connotation in context to it, because the Prophet Muhammad married, according to Sahih Bukhari, Prophet Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6 years old and consummated the marriage when she was 9 years old. Now, did this take place 100 years ago? No. Did this take place 200 years ago? No. This took place 1400 years ago, 1500 years ago. This is obviously a different historical time, a different historical context, a different culture we're talking about. We're not talking about American culture here. We're not even talking about European culture. We're talking about Semitic, Arab culture. Now, as for the issue of Aisha, so this whole pedophile thing argument just completely falls apart. When we just look at the historical context. Now, as for this Aisha thing, this is the last time I'm going to talk about this. I'm kind of getting sick of, just answering this already refuted point. As for the issue of Aisha, it's a very simple issue to answer. First of all, I would like to ask any of you Christians that keep bringing this up, what is the age of marriage in the Bible? Where in this entire book does it say you have to be 18 years old to marry? Where does it say you have to be 16 years old to marry? Where does it say you have to be 15 years old to marry? There is no age in the Bible that says you have to be 18 to get married, or you have to be 21 to get married, or 15 to get married. None of that. There's nothing in the Bible that says you have to be married, or the minimum age of marriage is 18 or 19 or 15 or 20 or whatever, or 9 or 6 or 7. Like, there's no age in the Bible. There's nothing in the Bible that says you have to be a certain age to get married to a man. A woman has to be a certain age to get married to a man. Nowhere does it say that. And I'll get into the whole inconsistency thing in a little bit. So what is the standard according to the standard of all three religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam? And I'm not even going to be getting into Hinduism and stuff, because they also allow marriage to 6-year-old girls, but that's besides the point. The right age for marriage is when the girl is fit, both mentally and physically. That's the right criteria for marriage. And back in the day, young girls, we would view them as young girls. We would view a 6-year-old or a 9-year-old as a young girl. But back in the day, young girls, we view them as young girls. But back in the day, marriage to young girls was very normal. We might have it differently because society has changed, but back then, not just in the Middle East, but virtually in many places. For example, the Roman Empire. In the Roman Empire at that time, girls as young as 7 years old were getting married to older men, according to the Roman Empire. Um, uh, you know, Including places like Europe, marriage to young girls, they wouldn't even be called young girls, was very normal. Secondly, even if we read the hadith, it only says Aisha moved in with the Prophet Muhammad. There's nothing about sexual intercourse or what have you. But nonetheless, even if you have those issues back 1400 years ago, 1400 years ago, or 1500 years ago, the time when the Prophet Muhammad lived, which was, you know, in the 5th and 6th centuries, um, back then, that's the way society was. We might view it differently, but back then, a 15-year-old boy would be viewed as a man ready to go into war. These days, 15-year-olds are not viewed that way. They're too busy playing PS4 or what have you. Society has changed, and anybody who does a simple academic study will see that for themselves. Now, obviously, in today's age, it would be wrong to marry a 9-year-old. Why? Because in today's society, we know 9-year-olds are not fit for marriage, especially mentally. They're not ready for marriage. So any Muslim man who's indulging in child marriages are wrong. That's not following the Prophet Muhammad's example, because the Prophet Muhammad's example is marrying a girl or a lady when she was both physically and mentally fit. If you don't do that, you're not following the Prophet's example. So Aisha would have been viewed as a young woman, not as a girl back then. And I'll get into that, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And another thing to keep in mind is if you read the history of Al-Tabari, the history of Al-Tabari, volume 7 and volume 8, it talks about how Aisha was actually engaged to somebody else before she was married to the Prophet Muhammad. So that tells you that back then, society, you know, they would marry young girls. They would marry younger women to older men, and it was just something very normal back then. Prophet Muhammad was not the only person who did it back then. A lot of men his age were marrying young girls because that's just the way society was back then, and nobody back then said anything about it because, you know, they were doing it themselves. Like Umar Ibn Khattab married a girl who was, I think she was, eight or 11, something like that. So Umar Ibn Khattab himself married a girl, according to Ibn Sa'd's history, a young girl too. So you know, people didn't even think twice about it. People would just do it too. So the Prophet Muhammad wasn't the only one who was doing that. That's just the way society was back then. So did Aisha reach the age of menstruation? And the answer is yes. The Maliki scholar Dawudi commented about Aisha's marriage. He said Aisha had then physically matured well indeed. This is from the explanation of Muslim by Imam Nawawi, the Book of Marriage, Hadith number 75, volume 9, page 207. So not only had Aisha reached puberty when her marriage was consummated, she was also physically and psychologically a mature adult. You know, and Aisha herself said that she considered herself to be a woman at the age of 9. You know, and she said that Aisha said when a girl reaches 9 years of age, she is a woman. So Aisha herself said that she's a woman when she was 9 years old, and this is found in Jami-at-Tirmidhi, volume 2, page 479 to 480 to page 481, hadith number 1109. So that's the direct reference, and again, I'll be posting all the references below. So basically, you know, many girls menstruated or reached the age of puberty by 9 or 10. Imam Shafi says in the book Sirah al-Walam al-Naba, volume 10, page 91, during my stay in Yemen, I have come across girls at the age of 9 menstruated so often. So basically, you know, Arab girls were reaching the age of puberty, or they were reaching the age of maturity back 1400 years ago at the age of 9 or 8 or whatever. So this was something very common. But in today's society, in today's age, we know that 9-year-olds are 9-year-olds. They're basically, or 6-year-olds and 9-year-olds are basically kids or children. They're not considered, they're not adults, or they're not physically and mentally considered adults like they were 14 or 1500 years ago. So society has changed. You know, So we have to keep that in mind. So this refutes the idea about the whole Prophet Muhammad's marriage with Aisha and the criticisms surrounding it. And but what about child marriages? Like I said, child marriages is not allowed in Islam because in order to marry a girl, she has to be mentally and physically fit for marriage. And 9-year-olds and 6-year-olds are not mentally and physically fit for marriage. The only time you can marry a girl is when she's physically and mentally ready for marriage. And forced marriages are not allowed in Islam because the Prophet Muhammad himself said that the girl has to agree to the marriage. If the girl does not agree to the marriage, then she's not allowed to she's not allowed to be married. So the woman has to agree to the marriage. I'm just going to I'm trying to find that hadith right now. So basically, they need to be okay. I think I found it. All right, it says God's apostle said it is essential to have the consent of a girl or a woman for marriage. This is found in Sahih Bukhari, Volume 9, number 101. And the Prophet Muhammad said, "A woman without a husband must not be married until she's consulted." And this is found in Sahih Muslim Hadith 3303 and Sahih Muslim Hadith 3304. And this is also found in Muslim Hadith number 3305 and Muslim 3307 and Muslim 3306 and 3308. So basically, there's no forced marriages in Islam. The woman or the girl or the woman has to agree to get married to the man. If she disagrees or if she doesn't want to get married to the man, then she can't get married to the man, or she doesn't have to get married to the man. So there's no such thing as forced marriages in Islam. So that's the whole thing behind that. So basically, if there's any Muslim or if there's any Arabs or any Muslims that are giving their daughters off to marriage without their consent, they're not following their religion. They're not following the text, because according to the Muslim text, the girl has to agree to get married. There's no such thing as forced marriages in Islam. What about the Bible? Well, that's a completely different story, because the Bible has terrible, terrible, terrible things it says about women. So basically, the Bible allows pedophilia. It allows sexual slavery. It allows forced marriages. It allows all this kind of bizarre and misogynistic things that no sane person would do. For example, a man can sell his daughter into sexual slavery, according to the book of Deuteronomy, etc., etc. But there's one really, really disturbing passage in the Bible, which I'll be reading right now, and it comes from the book of Numbers. Let me see here. Let's see if I can find it. I think people already know what I'm talking about here, but basically, if you read the book of Numbers, chapter 31, it talks about the vengeance on the Midianites. And there's one. Alright, so in the book of Numbers, chapter 31, verse 17, Moses tells his followers, after they completely ravaged the Midianites, he says, and this is the book of Numbers, chapter 31, verse 17, and again, I'm reading from the Bible, not some anti-supernatural liberal material, but anyways, it says in the book of Numbers, chapter 31, verse 17, it says, "Now kill all the boys, and kill every woman who has slept with a man, but save for yourselves every girl who has never slept with a man. All of you who have killed anyone or touched anyone who was killed must stay outside the camp 7 days. All right, so basically in the book of Numbers, chapter 31, verse 15, Moses says, "Have you allowed all the women to live?" He asked them. They are the ones who followed Balaam's advice. They were the means of turning any Israelite away from the Lord, and what happened at Peor. So that plague struck the Lord's people. Moses says, "Now kill the boys and kill every woman who has slept with a man. But save for yourselves every girl who has never slept with a man." So basically, in the book of Numbers, chapter 31, verse 17, basically Moses was telling his fellow Israelites to kill all non-virgin women and take virgins as slaves, as sexual slaves. So he says, "But save for yourselves every." In verse 18, he says, "But save for yourselves every girl who has never slept with a man." In the book of Numbers, chapter 31, verse 18, "But save for yourselves every girl who has never slept with a man." So that means that virgin girls who were even younger than 6 or 9 years old were taken as sexual slaves, for the Israelites in the book of Numbers, chapter 31, verse 18. So they had no consent. They couldn't. Those virgin girls couldn't run away or say, "No, I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to be forced into, having sex with, older Israelite men." They were forced into doing, that stuff. And not only that, but Moses commanded killing boys, killing innocent kids in chapter 31, verse 17. He says, "Now kill all the boys and kill every woman who has slept with a man." But the Prophet Muhammad said, "Don't kill women and children." He said that in war. He said specifically, "Do not kill women and children," inside Bukhari, inside Muslim. And again, I'll be posting the hadith below. So Muhammad is more merciful than Moses, because in chapter 31, verse 17, he says, "Now kill all the boys." So Moses is saying, kill innocent boys, and he's saying, kill every woman who has slept with a man. So Moses wants women killed just for not being virgins, So, and he says, "But save for yourselves every girl who has never slept with a man." In chapter 30, in book of Numbers, chapter 31, verse 18. So this has very disturbing implications, because Moses was a man of God. Moses was communicated with God and carried out the Lord or God's commands. And who is God according to Christianity? God, the God of the Old Testament is Jesus according to Christians. We Muslims don't believe, but Christians believe that Jesus is God according to is the God of the Old Testament. So God and Moses are approving pedophilia, sexual slavery, killing innocent boys and killing non-virgin women, just for being non-virgins. So, like, is this really? So the question I have for Christians is this really the God you want to worship? A God who's so obsessed with the sex lives of his fellow Israelites, or his fellow his fellow Israelites? It seems I don't know. It seems a little too disgusting and vile and evil to me. So basically, Islam's stance is a lot better. Islam's stance on marriage and marriage with young girls, etc., is a lot better than the biblical standards. And again, like I said, in Roman times, 7-year-old girls were married to much older men. There's also another thing was that if you read like the history of the Roman Empire, there's even more disturbing aspects to it. Uh, for example, there is some evidence that Constantine would prostitute young girls. Would prostitute young girls to much older men, and this has very, very disturbing implications to it, because the Romans, I don't know, the Romans were very sexually perverse during in ancient times. So again, it seems like any Christian who uses this argument is inconsistent, and any atheist who uses this argument is also inconsistent. Because if you look at human history, 1,400 years ago or 1,500 years ago, this was a very common. People didn't even think twice about it. It was a very common thing to marry girls who had just reached maturity or puberty, and consummating the marriage when they reach a full womanhood. And Aisha herself said she reached full womanhood at the age of 9, like the reference I just gave the reference. So like nowadays, it would be wrong to marry a 6-year-old or a 9-year-old because we know they're mentally and physically not ready for marriage. But now we know. But 1,400 years ago, it was a different case. So this is just my thoughts on the whole thing. I'm bringing this up because people like David Wood and so are talking about the Cuties. The Cuties is a Netflix film where a young Muslim girl runs away from her Muslim family and joins some dance competition or some stupid story like that. I don't even watch Netflix. Netflix is retarded anyways. I think my younger brother said it best. He's like, Netflix is for girls. Real men watch Hulu. So watch Hulu. That's a lot better. But anyways, this is just my 2 cents here. Please, share your comments, and I look forward to what other Christians have to say about my thoughts on the Bible. Stay tuned. A lot more videos are up ahead.